Wes Streeting has decided to ditch their social care reforms for 3 years. Now, they've had a pretty turbulent 6 months in government, and the Health Secretary seems to think it's a good idea to put these reforms off until 2028. Instead, Labour will be launching a 3-year-long commission. Wes Streeting has defended the timescale for reforming adult social care in England, with proposals on its long-term funding unlikely to be delivered before 2028. The Health and Social Care Secretary is promising to finally grasp the nettle on social care reform, but said on Friday the process would take time. The Independent Commission, chaired by Baroness Louise Casey, will begin work in April, but it's not due to publish its final report until 2028. It will be split into 2 phases, the first of which will report by mid-2026 and identify critical issues and recommend medium-term improvements. But phase 2, which will look at how to organise care services and fund them for the future, will not report until 2028, a year before when the next election must be held. And this sums the Labour Party up. They don't want to take action on anything. They just want to look like they're doing work, but not actually doing anything. This is exactly the same with the two-child benefit cap. Instead of scrapping it, they created a child poverty action force, which will look into child poverty, and then they're going to come back with solutions, which will probably be scrapping the two-child benefit cap. Here, Labour want to spend most of their first term in Parliament relying on quangos and commissions. We don't need reviews. We don't need inquiries. The research is already there from activists and economists. What do you make of Streeting pushing back much needed reforms to social care?
I understand how circumstances can change, so you might need to come in with one plan and change it. And I think we've given Labour actually plenty of leniency when it comes to certain topics and about how here's what they promised and here's what they want to deliver. And we accept that some things will have to change because circumstances change. If they didn't actually have a plan for this, then they weren't ready and they lied again. It infuriates me. How can you have so many years to build up towards becoming the next government and not actually have something in place? Now, I understand as the shadow cabinet, they have less powers, but they have pretty much all the same access as the government does. They have all the same documents, all the same briefings, all the same access pretty much as the shadow cabinet. So they knew all the details that they had that they needed to make the changes that they should be making already. Again, I will give some leniency to the idea of some plans that they may have wanted to do, not wanting to do those due to lack of funding, circumstances, whatever. They don't have a plan. Here's a new commission, or it's not a commission, is it? What's the correct word? It's a
Well, they called it an independent commission.
uh,
That's the framing they're using, but
it's not a
it
review. I thought they changed it to review, or is it?
who
It
knows
doesn't
though?
matter
Who
anyway.
knows?
It's highly frustrating as well, not just because that it's proven that they didn't actually have a plan for this at all. That on top of that, the way we do reviews or commissions or whatever you want to call them in this country take too long. It makes simply no sense. I will go back and just dredge up COVID just for a second because our COVID inquiry is still not going to be finished for years, whereas most of mainland Europe have already done theirs. They did it before COVID was even over, even though it's not really over. There's some, I think Sweden had theirs done within 3 months. Why is it that anytime we want to do something, it takes this long? It's frustrating.
I mean, the entire sort of point of being a party ready for government or a government in waiting is to sort of do the things you're expecting to do when in government. And you're right, they've got power, and that's the entirety of the Labour Party. It's like, well, all we wanted was power, and now they've got power. They're sort of scratching their heads, going, "Oh shit, we actually have to do things now." Part of that is probably because they've been in opposition for so long, and I personally think that no one expected. I would say maybe 2 years ago, no one expected for Keir Starmer to be PM, including himself and including Morgan McSweeney. I mean, the point with Keir Starmer was to just wipe out the left. So they don't have a policy platform, shall I say. Now, look, the government said its ultimate aim is a national care service. And this was really talked about mostly under the Corbyn leadership, but it's actually mentioned in the 2024 manifesto. The government had promised a national care service in its manifesto, although provided little detail. The service is about national standards, consistent access to higher quality care for older and disabled people everywhere in the country. The Independent Commission will work with users of care services, their families, staff, politicians, and the public to recommend how best to build a care service to meet current and future needs. So, are we surprised at the lack of detail in their NCS plans? No. But in the 2019 manifesto, the NCS plans was to give free social care for all adults and free personal care for the elderly. Lewis, we obviously discussed Labour pushing back their social care reforms simply because they don't have a plan, but Labour literally had one in their last manifesto. So if the Commission comes back with something close to what Jeremy Corbyn offered, I think it seems unlikely that they will implement this because, well, it would be far too radical for Keir Starmer and the rest of the top team.
The problem is as well, it's not even just the case that they had a plan in that manifesto, is that these commissions, inquiries, reviews have all been happening for years. I was literally reading earlier today the one that Tony Blair commissioned and actually didn't end up accepting any of the recommendations at the end of it. I just don't understand how we can go through so many governments, so many different leadership so many different prime ministers, so much different cabinets, and just still not get this sorted. I understand it's very costly, and the cost of the increase is going up year upon year. But as we love to do on this channel and talk about these things, what do you think is one of the causes of all of this? Why do you think it costs so much, Curtis? Can you take a guess? It's because how much private hands are in this sector. Just reading a report that was released a few months ago by a team at Oxford, I was reading that 96% of residential care is now outsourced to private companies. 96. Most of them, the vast majority, are for profit. There are some organizations out there, of course, who don't provide, who provide service without making a profit, but the vast majority are profit makers. I was also then reading that one of the leading companies for social care for young people, just last year, in 1 year, just for the care of children in this country, they made £300 million profit. Where's the anger that £300 million is going into the pockets every year of some executives in private companies who are literally making profit off of the children that we have in our social care system throughout the UK? It's quite disgusting. So it seems to me, Curtis, that the simple solution, is it too simple? I don't know, is to perhaps get rid of these companies who are private and bring the care back into national hands. Because surely, if just one provider of social care for children in this country is making £300 million profit, if just that £300 million profit could be taken away and the cost absorbed by the taxpayer, well, isn't that going to save everyone literally billions of pounds? And that's just one sector. Again, private hands, outsourcing. In any of these plans, have you seen anything about them, bringing in a more nationalized system? Or is it West Streeting again, just continue going on about how we need to use the private sector?
Well, the point is that in their manifesto, there was no detail. It was, we want to build a national care service. And I think what they're doing is they're leaping on the popularity of the national care service idea under Jeremy Corbyn because he had the policies behind it. And they're like, well, we're radical. We're going to do a national care service, but we have zero plan for it. So I couldn't even tell you what the plans are because it's not in the manifesto. If we could guess, of course, it's going to work with private companies. Of course, they're not going to change that. And look, that's an easy decision for us. That's an easy thing to say. We just need to not have private industry making a profit of healthcare and social care. But that's very difficult for the Labour Party because they're funded by these people. I think it's remarkable that they're kicking the can down the road when the very same party at the last election did have a plan and they've got nothing.
With some of the stuff that they've come through with that they've actually done, like, I don't know, taxing private schools, that's like a on and off switch, isn't it? It's just one thing that you can just click and it's done.
Yeah.
It seems like any policy that they've got really which requires any sort of in-depth analysis or think or policy, there's just nothing. There's no substance behind any of their deeper policies. They've got some stuff which is just on and off, and the rest of it is, I don't know, it's just
I mean,
not there.
I would describe it as sticking plaster politics, which is
Yeah.
exactly what Keir Starmer said he wasn't about.
To a certain extent, we agree that they've come into a difficult situation, and I think again, I will always say that because it is only fair. But to then have no plans, we would expect if they had a plan, if they had to change them or adjust them, we'd be like, okay, we'd probably still criticize them in the way we would because we're fair when it comes to our criticisms. but there's nothing to criticize. There's no substance. Are we getting this midterm report in 2026, and it'll probably say the exact same thing as it did in the previous reports and commissions that have been put through, and wasted hundreds of millions of pounds on these commissions. That's how much they cost, by the way. Literally hundreds of millions of pounds these commissions cost. It's an absolute joke. And they will just come back with the same hashed out ideas. And the same thing is happening right now. And obviously, I know we're going to get onto that soon, but it's almost like parallel of what's happening with the Elon Musk drama right now. These people are calling for, oh, we need this commission, and Labour are bad for saying they don't want a commission. It's because there's been a commission, and they wasted. I'm not wasted. Sorry, they've spent hundreds of millions of pounds on it. So to do another one would be then wasting money. We have the action plans that we actually need. You've said it as well. They've been in previous manifestos. They've been in previous reviews. Just implement them. They're obviously just buying themselves time. That's as simple as that.
Funny strategy, because they've only been in power for 6 months. Clearly, they're universally hated. And to push something like this back until 2028, which the article mentions about a year before the election, I mean, how is that going to look for the people? What's their chances of another victory when they could say, right, okay, we had a rocky start. The first 6 months or a year was bad, but you know, they can make excuses. We had to take on so much shit, whatever. But look at what we've done since. We've radically transformed the NHS and social care for the better. But now it's going to be, right, the first 4 years in government, we've actually done sweet FA. We've done a couple of commissions. That's only going to buy into the narrative that they are absolutely useless in government, and it's only going to support, the opposition parties. It's only going to bolster them.
The idea of a shadow cabinet, I think fundamentally is actually a good idea. It gives people who are ready to come into government access to everything that they actually need to be able to perform quickly. They're in power the day that they get elected, and they should have, in theory, have everything ready that they need, with again some slight adjustments depending on situations that arise. That's fair enough. Most of the countries actually don't have this like shadow function. In the US, if you're elected, the president the president-elect starts getting, briefings and documents. His cabinet doesn't. The people who are going to be running his teams don't. They haven't even been put through Congress yet. So they actually do have an excuse of when they come into power and say, here's things, here's a mess. We didn't know this was going on. We're going to have to do this plan. They don't have that excuse here. They were the shadow cabinet. Wes Streeting was the shadow minister, and has had plenty of time to come up with at least a more specific plan that even could still be general, but still with more specifics.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.